to my next comic project, which is TAY, and that's short for the main character. They're her nickname, Shantae. Here's just a few pages that I have in Procreate because again, this one's on the back burner because this book is so Yule Died is like maybe 62 pages, and I believe this one is 262. So that was why this was put on the back burner because I was like, well, it's such an undertaking, and because I know how fast those illustrations went for the Yule Died Inktober drawings, I was hoping that that book would be easier to sort of shepherd out, but here we are. And because I didn't want to abandon this book completely, I do want to start peppering in work sessions on this one as well, just because it's so fun. Because I'm highly inspired by American oil painting fine artists like portraiture, and then as well as guys like Dean Cornwell or even like Norman Rockwell. If you actually see the juiciness of his paint in real life, and then obviously the Ghibli background paintings, like who doesn't love those? So I want to sort of fuse all of that together as the look for my backgrounds in the comic. And this is just first page. This is the 70s looking kitchen, a mom, window, and this would be like one of those 50s tables that some families had. They kind of look like a diner table. But yeah, I think this is super rough. Like I barely even worked on this. And then the door, the mysterious door. And that'll be sort of the symbol for the comic book overall, because that's like the door to her imagination. So it's very reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland or Wizard of Oz, in that things in her real life are reflected in this fantasy world, and she is an artist who likes to draw a lot and sketch a lot. So it's funny because like a lot of these books are coming out or have been coming out the past 10 years of like, because artists are making these books and they're reflective of like the artists that are making them. So surprise, the main character is also an artist. Again, super rough sketches, and this was great. So let me move on to the brush that I was using in Photoshop. I'll just jump into Adobe Bridge real quick. Um, so when I was working on these, I found like working low resolution was really great for the thumbnailing stage because you can't get into details and you're really in there to just hit the poses and hit the major compositional elements. So you zoom in, you'll see just how pixelated it gets. And I'm using like I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the brush I'm actually using. It's sort of a blocky Jamie Jones chalk brush with very flat edges. And it has kind of like that squiggly texture on the interior. But when you shrink it down, it's a really nice little drawing tool for initial stages. And you can see here like how loose I was in the beginning, and then things start, obviously with mileage, like you become more efficient hitting your shapes and your poses with more economy. And this was the very first design I did for Tay. Um, if anybody's wondering why I'm doing a story about the other, as they like to say, the other is my family. So my niece, this is inspired by my niece. Um, I mean, I started the story, I wrote it, or I began writing it in 2011, and I finished the writing in maybe 2016, 15. It was around the time when I was working at Marvel TV, which is different than the new Marvel television imprint. Um, I was trying to come up with a reason to have this like silly sword where these characters stacked into a sword, but it was just, I wanted a fun thing, and it was just about me having a fun thing rather than a thing that fit within the story itself. So although I really like these characters, they are meaningless and just fun little sketches. So like all of us artists, she'll be carrying her sketchbook around with her a lot. These are some sort of unappealing sketches I did on the original first iPad Pro. Don't love any of these. This is sort of honing in closer to where I want to go, but you could see even in this face sketch, it's too reminiscent of like other like animated like, major feature design aesthetics, and I don't want that. So there is like a realm within like sort of French comic anime that I wouldn't mind being, because like you can't come up with a brand new abstraction for how humans are cartooned without it feeling somewhat unappealing if it goes so far out in left field. So I want it to be appealing, but I also don't want it to be reminiscent of the most major movies coming out. So her face design is still sort of in limbo, but as through 260 something um, layout thumbnails, I was able to sort of capture the poses and the body shapes that I needed for the character, or for Tay. I don't talk to her as a character. She's my little dude. And then this is like obviously very Miyazaki reminiscent. I don't know. It's not exactly like his Lupin jump run, but it gives me the feeling of that. And then like this little heroic pose she does when she jumps out of a bushes, and she's got this little switch with like some leaves on the end. So again, using my time getting familiar with the character over so many sketches, and then using that to facilitate the final design. So, and I probably worked on these back when I was at our old Burbank house, and this was even years ago from now. So I haven't worked on these in quite some time, maybe, Jesus, over 6 years. Because again, those were done on the first, I believe, the first iPad Pro. And these are very old sketches. I don't love the mom here. She's meant to be like sort of like have like balletic elegance to her, and she really likes Paris and France, and she's really of that aesthetic. But these proportions are too plain and sort of bland. But though I do like the side view for Tay quite a bit. And we're not going to do purple because too many people are giving little kids purple stuff. So I have to figure. I think what I'm going to do is like every day when she goes to school, she's going to have a new outfit, and that'll be reminiscent of her mother's aesthetic. So nothing heavy-handed or detailed, but it will have. I'll have to put work into figuring out how to say something more with very little. And then more sketches of the mom. I really like the elegance. Again, like it feels like a ballet dancer. And then the really small rib cage, and then the very long legs, and then old sketches. And then for some reason, these sketches remind me of my buddy Nico Bannister, who is a French comic artist. And I don't hate going in that direction again. I think there's something appealing about that, like the anime through a French lens. I find really appealing. And this will be her brother, who you only see during one dinner scene. But I've known these guys growing up in high school, and like my only way that I could sort of describe them were like obnoxiously relaxed. Like I would get irritated if somebody was so chill that there was like nothing to the personality. But I thought it'd be funny. Like he's a good guy. She loves him, but that's how he operates. And then Grandpa, um, again, it's most of his drawings came through the boards, the panels, and I don't have a design for him yet. I found this on some stock photo site, and this is not the design I would want. Like I want it to be very specific to the project, and I'm not going to steal some random guy's likeness. But I thought this was a really great jumping out point. And then this was done with brushes I made back in 2010 when I was trying to make line decker brushes at Blur Studio, because they were working on like what's the place that did the BioShock games? It was that other one where it sort of had like a line decker quality to some of the marketing art within the game, or the posters. But anyways, so I was trying to make that brush, and then I made one that had these striations, and it kind of looked like wood, like paint on wood. So turning it into hitting one of the settings within Photoshop, I don't know if it was like subtract, ended up giving it this really dry brushy effect, and it looks like paint on wood if you layer it correctly. Sorry, zooming in on Bridge is a little bit odd. And then this is the overview of like the fantasy world within her mind. And you can get a clear sense of like where she's going, where she's going to be at different scenes within this. And this was just a world map for my mind. Like again, I would love to have shorthands for beautiful artwork, but that's just not me. That's not how art comes to me. Everything is labored, everything is pain, yet fun. Pain yet fun. That's life. And I don't know, maybe one day I'll paint this up for some sort of promotional thing. But for right now, this is the overall gist of the world. There's the dark, there's the light. When you say it out loud, it sounds a little obtuse and dorky, but there it is. And then this will be, spoiler alert for anybody going to read the book in like 30 years. This will be reminiscent of of like social like King's Tower, or like just a monolithic tower that's sort of like slightly she's vibing off of, because the mom has like pictures of the Eiffel Tower um, in her house, plus other reasons which we'll get to eventually. And then there's this other character she encounters in that world, who's always trying to sort of protagonist, or antagonist rather. And I went from this, which I was like, I kind of like it. I'm looking for a frog, or like something slightly frog, because everything's through a lens of her foggy memory. So everything's not quite exactly the way you would think it would be. So it is a frog, but it's not specifically a frog. And this is sort of where I landed, because I love, um, Jesus Louises, where are we? Like the creepiness, you can go from here to like sort of the side view, which feels like inviting and cute. And same thing here, like at a neutral, like there can be like an inviting nature to the design, but then like a terrifying wolf, you can go from like beautiful and cute to like they'll bite your face off. So how do I get that range out of the design? And then these characters, which are reminiscent of, again, of something in her real world experience. And then a character just completely made up in her mind. And this thing here was done on a Cintiq companion, and for some reason that thing had, that's the old portable Cintiq that had a computer within it, and it was great. It actually worked very well. It's just the screen was really almost too small, and it was a little bit heavy for lugging around, but it was pretty great nonetheless. And somehow the operating system had reset, and I lost all the drawings I did. And this was one of the ones I lost, but for some odd reason I took a photo of it, so there it is, which I'm really happy for, because it's meant to be this sort of Muppety squirrel character. And I really liked it, and thank God we have it, because it had disappeared for a bit. And just sketches of the house, the school, her little cubby with that turquoise or teal door. And then these, again, I'll just go through some of the thumbnails. If anybody's still here, I'm sorry. I know it's easy to ramble, especially when it's off the cuff. But you can see, like, I started having to like make my page bigger, make my page even bigger. Wait, it's not big enough. And this is the most fun way to do the comic for me, because I can see the whole story unfold, and I can see the sections and the pacing in a way that I can't do with writing, because I am not a writer. I enjoy writing, but God, I'm just, that's not me. Not smart enough, not academic enough. But here we are, writing a comic book. Thankfully, like that the writing can be loose enough that we can start to interpretate and reorient things within the actual storyboards or comic pages. And for me, like I feel like some of my most favorite comic books are sort of for the old dorks out there, like Wolverine the Apocalypse book that Mignola did, like where it feels like a self-contained story and it feels like a movie in a book. That's sort of what I want to go with here. Like I want to do my comic books, which are my versions of Miyazaki movies, where it's a self-contained thing with lots of like um, things that really stick with you, but not like overly complex design work or anything like that. And that's one big surprising thing, going from a college student who drew things and designed things that had a lot of superficial detail, then going to this where I'm drawing a book about a little girl with no design to her, and it, and then background characters, which again are very minimal, but the excitement and the interest comes through how the simplicity and how that design works through the story and how it relates to the main character and the overall vibes. I'm still learning. I'm new to comic books, despite having loved comic books for so long, despite working for Marvel. This is the house that my sister had lived in. This is the house I'm modeling their home off of. It just has a very interesting layout in the backyard. It's like very lush in a Ghibli way. And we weren't rich growing up, and you can kind of see that within this photo. But there's a beauty to it, right? Because in Pennsylvania and in the East Coast, when things bloom, like even the most raggedy thing starts to have some lush appeal to it. I'll just flip through to kind of show you like all the pages. And once I got here, I was like, oh, let's throw some color in. And I do enjoy how that starts to, I can use a limited color palette just to describe where we are in the scene. And it's digital, so what? Gray or green, it doesn't matter. It takes no effort to, or like 1 second more of time to pick those colors. And then I haven't done this for all of them, but I did start highlighting the sections of the comic book to show in pink is where you're at the house with mom. The green is when you're between school and home, and the teal is when you're in school, and then everything else is in the fantasy world. And I saw this the other day. I was like, good gracious, they're mostly in the fantasy world of this book. Um, and then all the you don't see it all here, but the purple is are the flashbacks within the book, and it's just really interesting to be able to see that on a macro scale, zoomed out, and again get a sense of the pacing, get a sense of where we are within the world. And here are the layouts, like the actual final layouts, like all the pages. And then the final scene right here, which I won't zoom in on. I'll just pan around some of the comic pages. So these orange characters, again, everything reflects back to the real world. So when she was very little, I don't know, maybe 2 or a toddler, like there's, kids are scared of like the strangest little things and that you wouldn't have expected. So like maybe the lint off a very um, sort of fuzzy couch pillow, like really freaked her out, and it just like viscerally, like she has an aversion to. So these are all going to be little orange characters that are sort of like they look little octopusy characters, but they're actually just made of like felt or something like that. And that's what you see here is like a bunch of them huddled, and this guy's giving them a thumbs up because this other giant one is confronting her as she wakes her way through their territory. Um, but again, like there's barely anything to the designs, but to me, what makes it interesting, and exciting is how it relates to the psyche of the character. And never do I explain this to myself or to anyone else. This is the most I've ever talked about this book to anybody. So like to say it out loud like that, oh, it makes it sound like actually has some foresight, but it was a general feeling about this stuff. It's like, oh, I really like how that feels, but it wasn't even a conscious thought. Yes, I was sort of crafting it in a God, thoughtful manner, but like subconscious thoughtful manner. I did have intent behind it, even if it was all very wishy-washy in my mind, or I wasn't verbalizing it with actual human thoughts and sounds. And this is another one coming to see her off as she leaves. This isn't drawn the way I want it, but I love this idea of her where like she gets some grass in her mouth and she just kind of spits it out. Bleh. And then uh, again, because I like to see like because I'm thinking about also putting this on a website eventually where you can look at it like a storyboard because I love animatics. Like if you've worked at an animation studio or you've worked at a studio that does animation or anything that requires storyboards, like there's a very exciting thing that happens when you see a finished or like a fully realized storyboard and things come to life through the most simple drawings. Um, and watching animatics over the years at these studios and getting really excited about the animatic, the sense of pacing or the emotion from the storyboards, and then you watch the final rendered animation and things become very stiffened up, whether it's the constraints of the CG or the constraints of the design of the 2D or 3D model. Um, I heard, I remember, I don't know if it was on Cartoonist Kayfabe, that somebody said, had some really great advice, and I'm going to butcher this, but like, I think it was something along the lines of, you should only do things in comics that you can do in comics, that can be done in comics. And for my needs, that's making sure I can push the character and the design for the emotion and not be constrained in a stiff manner, um, which would impact the shot or the panel. So if I need to break my design a little bit for the emotional impact, panel to panel, but within reason, obviously, because you don't want to go off the rails with it all. But and I'm not even saying it in the sense when anime does like the big crazy, and then what they've done they've done the same thing now in 3D with the Demon Hunters movie. Um, Not even that necessarily, but like, yeah, just playing for the panel and playing for the emotion while staying within reason. Um, all layouts, storyboards. Okay, so I have to shift this over because for some reason when you try to open it up, like they start flickering, and I tried to Google why. Oh, it's not doing it now. For God's sakes. I spent like a couple hours yesterday Googling why images flicker in Adobe Bridge, and now they're not flickering now that we're streaming. But it's really cool to be able to see it as a storyboard, see the character move. And obviously, this is reminiscent of May running in Totoro. And this is her mom being like, "Nuh-uh, get your booty up here." She's got to wash her hands for dinner. She scruffs her feet in the grass. And she's like, "Oh, man." And she walks back in this sort of serene Ghibli setting. And that's where I'll have fun. And that's where the art comes in. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to paint the backgrounds in a way that feels fun and feels like it feels serene. Her washing her hands with her mom giving her a towel. It's funny, like when you're doing this stuff and you only have to go so far for your stuff that you try to present to somebody else. They're like, "What the hell is that?" And this is funny. So this is early in the process of storyboarding this book, thumbnailing out the book. This is the most panel to panel I have. Like this one panel consists of 3 panels, and the rest are all horizontal. Because I had an emotional beat where she's thinking, and then she's saying no, and then she's saying um, that her drawing is not fridge worthy yet. And then all the rest are literally horizontal panels for the most part, unless they're a full page spread where you'd be like a pan up or down. And then again, she's building her toys underneath the kitchen table, and it's reminiscent of that tower in her fantasy world, and also slightly reminiscent of it will be in the end of the Eiffel Tower. I'm going on a lot. I'm going on a lot about a book that I'm barely going to be working on, but I do love it very much. And this is part of that animation I was talking about as well. Is like even like letting the sound effects like give you the feeling of like it's sort of like lightly raining out, and she's gonna have this kind of like very graphic raincoat on, and you can just hear the little splish, 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 splish of her tiny little legs hitting the ground. Her putting her coat up in the cubbies, getting to the chair, and then the teacher, the sort of like distance between a student and a stern teacher, and then using the anime glare within um, the glasses to sort of communicate that separation between the teacher's humanity, and the kids. Boom, 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 boom. Her back in the car with her mom, and she just remember when you were little and like you'd be in the car and the condensation would come down and like water would drip, and you kind of touch it with your pinky and like redirect the drips of the water. For those of you who grew up in like colder climates, this is sort of her. It's the '70s, so she gets to sit in the front with no car seat. Danger baby. So that's it goes on forever. I cut these all out, and it's mainly so I had a higher resolution thumbnail for when I do the finals. So I blew these up, and then I did like arduous screen caps of every single one of these panels so that they were a higher resolution. Because the actual resolution is like it's literally 10 pixels wide. It's so small. Um, so now I have all these kind of broken up into larger panels. And then here are some sort of like, I'm not proud of these, but I will show them. This is in Photoshop. The great thing about Procreate in the iPad are the brushes. You can get aesthetically appealing calligraphy and brushwork with very minimal strokes or effort, when in Photoshop you feel like you have to force an appealing brushstroke or layer it in a way because it's not good for mixing paints. In an Procreate, it just comes with the territory. Like you just get great brushes. So these are all done in Photoshop. So as I bring them in, then I'll adjust. And I have a tendency to oversaturate. This is something I'm gonna have to learn as I'm doing this book, is like when I'm doing these environment paintings, like to bring it back, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about when I get to this next painting. Is like I have my Ghibli reference, which I'm trying to learn from. And a lot of the learning from it is not just the color, but also the layering. Like that we've taken, me and my buddy Andy, who was in the chat earlier, we both were so lucky to witness Yoichi I don't remember his last name, but he did a workshop. He's actually a Ghibli anime background painter, and to watch him build his painting and just create masterful, beautiful, wonderful, like shocking art within minutes. Um, I sort of I want to learn from that layering. I will take days on something that he would do in 10 minutes, but whatever. It's art. It's fun. Um, so luckily we were able to witness like that layering process, and hopefully as I finally get in and try to find the process for this, I can really internalize that and find something that's efficient, but also still let you have joy, because the point of doing the backgrounds in the Ghibli slash American Illustrator way, or like classic or fine art portraiture way, is to have fun with the paint and let the paint be juicy and sort of um, yeah, just the beauty of the material itself. So I don't want it to become so efficient that it becomes mechanical. I want to feel that the pages are loved. And look at those garish greens. Maybe it's coming across differently once it's sort of compressed through YouTube, but trust me, the greens are too much. And then you could tell the red house is sort of reminiscent of the red building in Spirited Away. So like I'd be studying like how they layered the paint on that as well. Even though this is a brick house, and that brick will in actuality be a little bit more desaturated. And then this is Photoshop, and I'm struggling here. Like I don't want to do a thing. I do not want to use automated grass brushes, because I find it gross. Like I want to enjoy art and I want to make art, and I don't want the computer to make the art for me. So I'm going to be. I'll find the balance, but I want my blades of grass to actually be drawn and to be thoughtfully placed that accents the subtlety of the composition. Not that these are nicely placed or any of that, just hopefully in the end. And then another opening or earliest shot within the book. I think maybe she first goes into the fantasy world, then she starts walking down away from that sort of uh, one of her friends, who's that Muppety looking squirrel character. Ah, spoiler, last page. You did not see that. That's it. This is so weird that this is it feels like class, but nobody can talk to you. So it's up to you to just ramble as much as you can. And I realized I didn't have my webcam on, so apologies for that. I got this little Nintendo Me I use, and you can turn it on and off. And I forgot to turn it off. So that's TAY. I I wrote the book. It's sort of been done in terms of the story. Like, man, almost literally a decade now. I still want to make the book. I still want it to be out there, and I want to have fun making it. But it is on the back burner because I have that smaller book, relatively smaller because it's still a lot of pages. But hopefully, I can get through that in an efficient way.